Yeah, so once again, thank you so much to everyone who's joining our first masterclass for digital pioneers. As you all know, it's a digital skills program where you get access to masterclasses, inspirational talks, mentoring sessions, and at the end of it is a pitching competition for a share of £5,000 in grant funding. And as you all know, we are very privileged to have a very special speaker today who's been doing marketing and working with a lot of global brands for the last 20 years or so, the likes of Coca-Cola, L'Oreal, and the biggest brands you could ever think of. She's the founder of Wiggle Marketing, a person who's very passionate about supporting startups like yourself. And she's going to be talking to us about, as you can see, marketing for startups, creating a digital presence on social media, website, and other platforms. So without further ado, Alena Rossini of Wiggle Marketing.
Thank you so much, Ed, and thank you everyone for having me. Real pleasure to be with this group. We have an hour together. Apologies. We have quite a strict timing because I need to be somewhere at the end of this. But I'm hoping the hour is going to be useful and productive for you. I'm not going to be able to see the chat, so if there are questions, please put them into a chat. I will pause and look periodically. What I would try to cover today is really the baseline for you to consider when building a digital presence. I'm going to focus on two specific areas, website and social media. But given the limited time that we have together, I'm going to focus on covering the steps and the questions that you need to ask yourself when developing a presence, rather than going to the technical specifications. And if you need help with the technical application, reach out to me separately, or I can give you some resources as well. But the session today is very much about what are the steps that you need to go through in order to ascertain how to build your website or digital social media presence. Few house rules. We are a very small team here. I want this to be as interactive as possible. Feel free to express your thoughts. There is no wrong question. There is no wrong answer, actually. Challenge yourselves, but in a positive way. So when I say in a positive way, build on each other's ideas. It's no but, it's yes and. And then if there are any specific discussions or questions that we think we should delve into deeper, but are not part of the kind of main focus of the session, let's put them on a parking lot and then let's find a way to address them separately. Some of you that have been in the previous sessions with me before have seen this slide. The one thing that I want you to remember is you all own your businesses. You will know your business better than anyone else. Do not expect me to have a really strong opinion that is right for your business. I can give you guidance and my perspective, but ultimately you own your brand and your business, and you will know it better than anyone else. Also be conscious about the level of experience and knowledge that is on the call here. Some people will have real depth of knowledge in specific area like technology. Others might have more depth of knowledge in, say, design. Others might be really strong in operations. The intent here is to cover the same level of information across all, and kind of acknowledge that some people will feel more comfortable in one space and less comfortable in another, and that's perfectly fine. It's about understanding the individual spaces and your strength, and then leveraging other people within your network to help you with others. And as I already said, today is about organizing your thoughts and bringing clarity rather than going into nitty-gritty of execution. So it's all about you. I mentioned you are from varied backgrounds. I mentioned I can't see the chat, but I would ask you, can you please drop in a chat where you're from, kind of which area, or if you are from abroad, which country, and what business you are building. And then I'll ask Ed to help me to read it out.
While we're waiting for the um, chats to come in, we know for sure we have some um, founders from Kent. So Sheerness in Kent, Al Shepi. Um, we also have, yep, yep, Newcastle, Maya.
Newcastle. Hey, Maya.
Hi.
Yeah, another one
Isle of Shippey. Where is that?
in Sheerness in Kent. It's one where one of our hubs is located actually.
Very cool.
Anyone else would like to share?
Norwich, London. Nice. So we have a real mix here.
From Paisley,
Scotland.
Scotland, yeah. Essex, Australia, but business based in London, Alexander, yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So the point here is we are all from different backgrounds and all walks of life. What brings us together and what unites us is this passion to make a difference, to build a business that makes a difference, right? To you, makes a difference to you and to the consumers that you are trying to target. I mentioned this already. When it comes to digital presence, there's kind of three different ways to think about it. Building presence online, whether that's your own website or selling through other platforms, building presence in social media, and there are many platforms in that space, but also other digital present ways to build a digital presence, and that might be through business listings or through search. We're not going to touch upon the third one in much detail today, but we can have a session on this if you'd like. So without further ado, what do we do when it comes to digital presence? I always say everything starts with strategy. Before you even think about, I want to build a website or I want to get X many followers, start thinking about what is it that you're trying to achieve with your business. Is it that you want to sell a lot of small items, or you want to build a small community where you're going to have a large items sold to a few people? And who are you targeting? Because the targeting is going to determine what type of digital presence you're going to have. If you're targeting a dog owners, it's going to be a very different landscape from a digital perspective to if you're targeting a lifestyle fashion audiences. So start thinking about who you're targeting, understand what is their media behavior, and then map that media behavior to the digital channels that you're trying to apply. So essentially, know your audience. The better you know your audience, the better you understand how they interact with digital channels, the better you're going to be in building your own digital presence. Sounds obvious, but you would be surprised how few people actually put it on a page. Now, when it comes to digital presence, we split it roughly into e-commerce and social media. I'm going to cover the e-commerce to start with, and I'm going to structure it around three really simple themes: the why, the what, and the how. The why is really for you to decide what is the purpose of website. Is it to inform people about your business, give a nice narrative around the origin and the thinking and the proposition? Or is it really to sell your product? And the reason why this is important to know right from the start is because it will inform everything else about the website or the commerce presence that you will have. So be really clear. Do I just want to inform and my selling channels are different? Or do I want to sell through the website? And quite often I get to hear, well, I want to do both. In those cases, I say, be really clear about what is the realistic achievements from a sales perspective on your website. And I'll come to it a little bit later. Can you just put in a chat how many people already have their own website here? Just show of hands. How many people do you already have their own website? Yes, yes, no, yes, yes, yes. By the way, you figured that I can see the chat, right? Yes. So vast majority of people have their website. Fantastic. How many of you have it as their main point of sale, main channel for converting business? Just put yes in a channel if that's your main source of sales. Half, yes. Trying to, but not main at the moment. Yeah. So this is just validating what I see with startup teams quite often. Everyone would like to sell through website, but actually, quite often in the early stages, alternative channels are better and faster way to generate revenue. So especially if you are in fashion, in jewelry, in any kind of a product that has multiple SKUs, it's much easier to do a pop-up store, a collaboration, networking, that will get you to the initial sales rather than a website. And the reason for that is because your website will only sell if you get people coming to it. So if you have a web traffic and if you have a really smart conversion. And those two are not easy to attain. So just because you can build a website doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be seeing a lot of sales through it. It still requires a lot of support and marketing activity. And in early stages of startups, direct kind of face-to-face brick and mortar selling can get you a faster revenue in an easier way than necessarily website. So going back to earlier strategy, think about what you're trying to achieve, think where you're going to have find your consumers, and then think about what is the role of your website. And I think even though that you build it for conversion, don't forget about the inform part. The inform part is basically building your story and telling people about your brand. And you should be really conscious about every touch point that you create, really working hard on building that narrative of your brand, because your brand is as important as your product. So when you're thinking about website, be balanced in the inform and have realistic expectations when it comes to the convert part. Now, what do you need to think about when it comes to a website? I think there's kind of three separate spaces that you need to decide. The first one is what is the format, and by format I mean, do you want to build a website? Do you want to build an app? Or do you want to use third-party commerce site? So let me start with the last one. Third-party commerce site, what I mean is the likes of Amazon or Etsy. By app, I mean, if you want a closed environment where you have interactivity with your consumers and you want to use data, that might be the right way to approach it. And own website, I obviously don't have to explain too much. You then need to think about the content, the brand, the product, the business info, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in a minute. And then the third part that you need to really consider before you even start building a website is what is going to be your amplification strategy, what is going to be your search optimization approach, and whether you will need some paid search support to drive web traffic. So let me spend a little bit more time on the format. I mentioned on website, app, and e-commerce. There is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong for any business. There is some leniencies across category, differences across categories, but in general, each of those routes has their pros and cons, and you just need to consider where you sit within the business, within your own business. So the first one, your own website, the pros are you're completely in control. It's usually quite flexible, so you can be making changes over time, and it can be very inexpensive. So really good reasons and drivers for building your own website. The cons, the limitations are your website is only as good as the number of people that visit it. And driving traffic to your website is actually quite challenging. So you need to be aware that building your own website is like having a book in a library. If people are not finding their book, no one is going to read it, right? The other thing about your own website is that you need some level of knowledge or an external support or a mix of both. Because even with the simpler websites, depending on the type of business, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be able to do everything by yourself. Apps are really useful if you have a service-based or gamification-based type of business where you want to be within a closed environment, because you'll have a higher degree of control, and importantly, you'll have access to customer data to a level that you wouldn't have in any of the other formats. However, you have the same challenges with not driving traffic, but driving downloads. And it can be very difficult to scale, can be costly to develop, and can be restrictive in terms of how we evolve it, because the developmental stages can be really expensive, although AI is starting to really help us in this space as well. And then the third part, external commerce sites. The big pro is you can quickly access large audiences and therefore get a really quick sales, right? Which is fantastic for some type of products. It depends on what type of audience you're targeting and how much control you're willing to relinquish. Because the biggest downfall of working with third party like Amazon or Etsy is obviously you have very limited control, both in terms of where you show up as well as how you show up. So your brand will be represented using existing templates in that environment, and you will pay for it. You will pay for it in commission. So most of these platforms take a percentage of the price of the sale. And in order for you to drive conversions, you will need to consider paying for boosting of your posts or sponsored content. So it's a fast way to reach larger audiences, but it's also very costly way. So you would need to, if this is your route, you would need to think about pricing right from the start and making sure that you have the right margins built into your products. Feel free to drop questions into chat if you have questions about formats. I'm going to go straight into looking at your own website and what does it take to build it. What are the considerations that you need to think about when building your own website? And there are a few. Hang on a second. There's a question. How about service-based businesses? Well, service-based businesses obviously depends on the type of business that you have. If there's not much difference between B2B and B2C, most will still have some level of website. It just depends on hospitality recruitment. I would say go for your own website. It's not complex. The only thing that you need to be aware is how integrated you want live listings and how do you want to handle customer data, because those are the two components that will add complexity to your website build. And web design development service is very straightforward. Build your own website. I would say showcase your design and development skill sets right at the first point of premise. I assume that if you're if you are providing web design and development services, your website should be a good example of the capability that you have. What if you offer product, service, education, all outside, interior design and homeware? You can deal with that. Website design is nowadays very agile and flexible, and you can really use a lot of UX and UI learnings that are available in public domain to help you to ensure that you have the best navigation and layouts that are fit for your audiences. I'm going to come to the design itself in a minute, but there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that through your own website. So let me go back to this slide, actual product components, and I call it product, but the same applies to service. Okay, there's kind of three things that you need to bear in mind. If you decided that your own website is the right way forward, before you even go into how am I going to develop it, you need to map what I'm going to have in the website. And the first thing that I always say is before you go into nitty-gritty of the content, you have to think about your landing page. Your landing page is absolutely critical because people are very unforgiving. In fact, people are brutal. It takes, the research says that it takes on average less than 2 seconds for people to decide whether they're going to stay or go from your website. So the experience that you get on a landing page needs to be top notch. And what I say about landing page, there's lots of different techniques how you can make your landing page sticky, but I always say be 100% on brand, have a high visual appeal, and make sure that the one thing that you want people to know about your brand is very clearly stipulated on that landing page straight away. So this is just an example, but you can see already the tone and visual appeal of a brand cues what the products are about. And the headline, 100% organic, doesn't tell you what the product is, but does tell you what the brand stands for, its USP. So a really quick way of getting people to know, okay, this is something to do with food and nourishment or nutrients, and it's all about being organic. I'm not saying copy and paste this. I'm saying find what's unique about you, make sure you have a really strong brand identity, and then ensure that the design that you put forward reflects both of those, the USP and the visual appeal that you need. The second thing then to think about is consistency. This is taken from Shopify as an example, but consistency goes for branding. You should have brand identity already built up, and you should be making sure that you are applying that brand identity. But the reason why I've put this one up is because you can see example of fashion and jewelry. It's really important if you do have product that you want to be selling, that the visual identity of the individual product shots is consistent over time, both in terms of tonality as well as styling. And I see this over and over when people develop their first website, they will do a photo shoot of the first product batch, and then they would have a new collection and they would have slightly different style, and then they're starting to mix them, and it's really jarring as a visual. You also need to make sure that you are really clear about whether you are presenting your products without background, just a clean presentation, or in use. So especially with jewelry, you can see in the middle one, all of the smaller tiles are product on their own. All of the bigger tiles are application of how the product is being used. The challenge that you have with those is if you start showing a few products, how they're being used, consumers will expect that every single product that you have on your website will be shown as a product and in use. You need to think about this when you're developing the content for your website, because this is where majority of your preparation time is going to end up being spent. Making sure that you have your product catalog really well documented from a visual perspective in a way that is consistent with your brand identity is the heavy lifting that you will need to invest in this. And then the second part, same applies for product descriptions. Make sure that you are using the same tone of voice. Make sure that you are using the same style in terms of the number of words that is being used and the information that is being provided there. Yeah. So one thing is how do you make sure that you have the right appeal? And that's all about design and UX and UI. The second is how do you make sure that you have the right content? And by right content, I mean consistent content that is depicting your brand in the right way. And then a third, often forgotten, but honestly, one of the biggest kind of no and blockers of customer experience is accuracy. And by accuracy, I mean things like having product descriptions with the right sizes, with the right material information, with the right caring information. And then the technical accuracy of your actual website. There is nothing worse than people clicking on something and just getting an error message. It turns them off, and quite often you can lose that customer altogether. Yeah. So those are the things to consider that you need to have in place before you even start developing a website. The other thing that you need to think about at this early stage is your search optimization. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, remember, I was talking about inform versus convert. The product part is all about conversion, right? But the information, the storytelling on a website really helps you with ranking on search optimization. You can only do that consistently and well if you have a content strategy right from the start. So do your homework in terms of what is the high scoring content, and then start looking at how do you develop that in the right tone of voice, not just for the website now, but for longevity over the next 12 months, so that you if you have blogs and additional content that you're going to be evolving the website to, all of that is linked to high SEO results. The reason why I'm putting it up here is because normally this is kind of something that people are thinking about later on. And what happens is you build a beautiful website and then you want to optimize it for SEO, and you suddenly start changing headlines and adding paragraphs to content, and it starts to get disconnected and jarring. So make sure that SEO strategy is part of your overall content development rather than an afterthought. So that's about the content. Now, if you know why you want a website and what you want the website to contain, you can go into the how. How do I actually build it? And it's really simple, right? You can either do it yourself or you can get external help. Yourself can be cost effective and you can be in control. Externally, if you use the right expertise, you will get a better results faster. Simple as that. I always use the analogy of IKEA. If you buy a flat pack in IKEA, you can probably build a cupboard yourself. But imagine if you paid 10% extra and somebody came to your home and actually built it for you and would have no extra screws left at the end, and it would be all nice and straight and right angles, and it was sturdy. That's kind of how you need to think about web build, right? You can do it yourself if you have the right skill set, or you can pay external party to help you with it. A word on external parties, because I know we all live in the world where there is a lot that you can do cheaper, or people think relatively cheaply, with the new working concepts that we have, whether it's Upwork, Fiverr, or Behance. I would say by all means, utilize the skill sets available out there, but be very aware that the skills and pricing vary massively. Okay. Here are just a few points to consider when you are engaging those third-party platforms to help you to make sure you get as good an outcome as possible. So brief properly. Be very clear about descriptions of what's in and out of scope. Use examples where possible. Stipulate exactly what the deliverables are, and stipulate number of revisions. Okay, so your briefing document, I always say garbage in, garbage out. If you put a poor briefing document, chances are what you get back is not what you wanted. Request also to have interactivity with who you think you're going to hire to understand their skill set upfront. So ask for references, ask to see past work, set up a briefing call so that you can see them on call. And if possible, build a payment structure where you actually pay more, you motivate people when they over deliver. So rather than just paying upfront a specific cost. You say, I'll pay you this now for this deliverables. If it's amazing, I'll pay you extra. Out of the three here on the right-hand side, I think Behance is probably the priciest, but also has the most appropriate skill set that you would want. I think getting the cheapest available from these platforms is typically the wrong strategy. Okay. Your website is essentially your shopping window. I told you, you have 2 seconds to convince people. If you get the wrong external partners, you're going to end up spending more time, money, effort, and frustration to then go back to a starting point. So if you need to use external support, make sure that you are using the right type of support. The other thing to think about when you're thinking of getting things done is it's not just about who is going to build my website. I always say that if you look at website, I would split the task at hand into a left and right brain, because they really are. And typically you need quite different skill sets for these two tasks because they are left and right brain. So what you need is amazing design, and then you need a solid coding. Now, typically people that are very good at coding are not great at design, and vice versa, because it is a different skill set. Now, nowadays, there is a lot of tools to help and bridge. Oh, hang on a second. my light went off. Hold on. Sorry about that. I'm in a room and the light went off. So there are now tools that bring those two together, but I think it's a good practice for you to take your branding guidelines and really look at how that translates into a web design, and only then go into development, because otherwise you will end up making compromises that will impact your user experience. There are tools available for design. You don't have to use pure designers, and I'll go through them in a minute. When it comes to development, you have to think not just about the platform itself, but also the frilly things around there, whether it's domain or integrations. And again, I'll talk about them a little bit more in a minute. And then there are a few other things that you need to bear in mind, and I'll cover them too. So going into design, and do shout. Sorry, I'm just reading comments. I'm going to ignore comments for now. I'll come back to them in a minute. When it comes to design, there is a spectrum of tools that are available to you, from tools that are very specific to web design, that don't build the web, but are amazing in creating really interactive template that you can then give to a developer, and that they will develop it based on that. And now there are lots of plugins actually from it, all the way to design tools that are actually part of the development platforms and embedded in the coding systems that they have. So the ones that I have called out here, some of you might be familiar with some of them. On the left-hand side, it's Figma. It's very specific to web design. The good thing about this is it's really varied. It can do pretty much any design you want. It already does all of the transitions and animations within it, and it now has API plugs to quite a number of the platforms that are available there. So if you are using a UI and UX designer, I would recommend you go with Figma. If you're not familiar with design and you're not using an external help, I would say this is too challenging to get your head around just for one website build. So unless you are a web designer or you're already familiar with Figma, I would say leave this to the external teams. But if you are reaching to a web or UI designer, they might as well tell you that they work in Figma. Okay. Then the middle one is, and there's a few different ones, but I have used Canva because I think it's the most prolific one. Those are design tools that are not specific to websites, but have a website option and have lots of templates and are super easy to use. So you can use Canva to create websites, and the free version is okay. The premium version is inexpensive and gives you a huge amount of imagery, as well as templates, as well as masks and frames and whatnot. Really, really useful tool. You can potentially publish directly from Canva as well, but if you do, the functionality around animation, transitions, and some of the plugins is relatively limited. So if you use Canva, I would say only use it if you just have information website, not conversion website, not something that you sell, and if you don't need any integrations. Otherwise, I would say for all means use Canva to design, but then develop in one of the proper website platforms. Okay, so Canva really useful, but be aware of limitations. And then on the right hand side is the actual embedded design tools within specific platforms. So I have used Elementor here. It's part of Elementor, can be standalone, but normally 99% of time is used as part of WordPress. It's essentially an add-on, and there are different fee structures from a free version to advanced versions that you need to pay an annual fee for. If you are using an external developer, they might have their own professional license on Elementor so that you don't have to pay it yourself. Elementor is the industry standard. It has tons and tons of templates. It has a beautiful styling and all of the functionality that you would want, including a lot of plugins and AI tooling. So what I suggest is, if you're developing yourself, places like Elementor, they do need some training, but it's relatively intuitive even for someone that hasn't used it before. What I would suggest, if you're doing this yourself and you are throwing yourself into WordPress Elementor, conduct the tuitions that they provide for free online via YouTube. And then more importantly, when you're looking at developing something, search through their templates and use a template. Do not build from scratch on your own, because if you haven't built a website before, chances are if you don't use a template, your output is just not going to be of the standard and quality that you would want for your brand. But templates are a really good way of getting you to a really high value design. The challenge with templates is, obviously templates are out there for people to use, and therefore the most visual appealing free templates are a little bit overused. So if you want to be unique, don't go for the top 3 pages of templates that you will see in Elementor or any of the others, because chances are there are going to be other websites that are going to be looking very similar to yours because they have used a free template too. There are hundreds of templates that you can buy, and they are inexpensive. Most templates are under £30, really under 50 USD. So I would say spend the time and effort selecting a template that is aligned with your brand style, and then pay that little bit extra, because it will mean that you have a beautiful visuals, but also that they're going to be unique to you. So that's from a design perspective. Now, that's just half of the story, as we were talking about. What platform you should use? There are so many, and we're not going to have a time to cover all of them. But I wanted to pull out the 4 that are the most common ones. and just tell you a little bit about each of them. I just pulled Wix, Shopify, WordPress, and Squarespace. If you look at where the majority of websites are currently built in terms of volume, when it comes to sites with retail capabilities, i.e., being able to sell, WordPress and Shopify are by far the most common. I think between the two of them, they probably have about 70% share in the market. So when it comes to investment in development, investment in things like AI tool support, whether it's a design AI or copy AI, both WordPress and Shopify are more advanced than the others. If you look at the pros and cons on WordPress versus Shopify, there are very polarized views. There are people that swear by Shopify. There are people that swear by WordPress. What I would say is the big difference is Shopify's pay structure is slightly different to WordPress. Shopify charges you per sales, and that makes it quite pricey. So when you're looking at, if you're deciding between WordPress and Shopify, make sure that you have the right level of subscription and make sure that you are understanding the fees that you'll be facing. If you're not looking at having sales done through your website, I would say Wix or Wix Studio is the most intuitive to build on your own. With a very little knowledge and with very limited understanding of coding, you can build a pretty good looking website on Wix, and their subscriptions are inexpensive. And Squarespace is similar to it as well. It might not have all of the functionality that the other three, but again, the intuitive way of building this is pretty good. So picking any of those four, you won't go wrong. But remember, it needs to match with design. Shopify has tons of templates, so does Wix. WordPress, I would say, use Elementor, because WordPress itself has templates as well, but Elementor is just so much more intuitive and wide-ranging. But that's not all. Having a design and choosing a platform isn't everything that you need to consider when it comes to a website. The other thing that you need to consider is integrations. So by integrations, I mean functionality that is not necessarily coming as a standard for the website hosting subscriptions that you have. And the most common ones, and most of them actually attract fee, is payment. So how do you accept payments? And there are different versions, from direct credit card payment to deferred payments. The options are vast, but you need to decide which payments are you going to accept and how much is it going to cost you. Then kind of the more simpler forms, but they're still integrations. They're still not part of the main websites normally, and that's typically things like contact and booking forms. So if you want people to fill up a form to contact you rather than just click on your email, it's an integration. Same with if you want to have a calendar that people can book appointment or stay through, you need to consider that. There's ways around that, things like Calendly, you can just put a link rather than having embedded booking form within the website. But those are things to consider. And then importantly, CSM, customer management systems. If you are collecting customer data, you want to, for example, those that have contacted you through a website, you do want to think about what and how you're storing. Now, some of the websites, some of the platforms have customer management systems within their offering, and you can simply plug it in. You might want to use Klaviyo or some of the external solutions and just connect them. That's also possible as well, but you need to map what is your option and therefore how you're going to execute it. And of course, if you want to, you should integrate either blog or social media or both within your websites. And typically for blogs, you will have a specific site within the platform. For social media, you might want to add an API to connect a live feed. So those are integrations. Then maintenance. It costs to set up a website, but it also costs to run it. So you need to think about subscribing to fees, domain hosting, security, are all costs that are going to be reoccurring. And be mindful that majority of the platforms will have subscription that will have like 50% off on the first year, and then hikes from year 2 onwards. So make sure that what you're signing up for, you can sustain over time, because you don't want to be coming to a 12-month period and realizing that your costs are increasing significantly because all of your subscriptions were on offer when you sign up for them. And then think about the frequency update and what the process is. This is particularly important for retailer websites where your SKUs are have a relatively limited sell-by date, or where you are updating collections frequently. You want the updates to be as smooth as possible. So you want to have a process of who is doing it, how is it being done, what information is being supplied, and what is the quality control that is implemented around that. And then last but not least, remember performance is really important. So web analytics, someone in the chat has mentioned already Google Analytics. Absolutely, Google Analytics is great. Most of the platforms will have some form of their own analytics as well. You should be using them and really looking at them regularly. I would say at least weekly, to understand your web traffic, understand the sources of your web traffic, and then looking at optimization of your site. Remember the 2% that leave within the 2 seconds that people have to leave. The general conversion ratio for a sales website is between 2 to 5%. So out of all of the traffic that comes to your website, I'm generalizing, but in general, somewhere between 2 to 5% of people end up actually buying a product. You want to be at the 5% mark, not at the 2% mark, because that means double the sales, right? So the more you can do to optimize your website so that you drive people to conversion as quickly as possible, the better the return on the effort that you have put into your website. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm conscious of time. Any questions around web?
I think Adrian has 2 questions. One is, how do you judge if the person or organization doing the website or SEO has the appropriate skill set for the price you're paying? And how do you measure if SEO is performing well? And tips on what content to put on an e-commerce website for blog content.
Okay. So how do you judge if a person or organization that is doing your website has the appropriate skills? So number one, see what they have done previously. Ask them to show you their previous work, and you can judge, is that to a quality and standard that you expect or not. Ask for references. Ask for people that have worked with this partner or provider, and don't be afraid to drop them an email or call them up and say, hey, I'm about to use these people for my website. What was your experience? People are normally very willing to share. The third is, if this is the first time that you're working with them, make sure that you have the right milestones in place for checking. So whichever way they work, you should have an approval of design before you hand it over to development, right? So make sure that there is a clarity and feedback on, this is how my website is going to look. And sometimes if they are already developing in like Elementor, they will say, we will not show you a design, we're going to be developing straight away. I don't think it's a good practice, but it does happen. If that's the case, I would say, ask them to do a landing page or one section of a landing page and one section of another page, and share that with you before they develop the whole thing. Because what you don't want to do is them going away for 3 weeks, coming back with something that you don't like, right? So make sure that your interactions and points of revisions in early stages of the partnership are very frequent so that you are on the same page. SEO, similar but different. But I think SEO is easier to gauge just from the approach that they have to a proposal. How do they look at keywords? How do they then map competitive context? How do they then suggest a strategy on the back of that for your SEO? Those, if they are doing those three things, you already know that they probably have some level of knowledge in the SEO space. And then how do you know, how do you measure SEO? SEMrush is probably the best tool. Now, I'm not saying you should go off and subscribe to it. It's over £100 a month. But whoever is doing your SEO, if they're not subscribing to SEMrush or similar platform, they're probably not serious about SEO. SEMrush is basically an analytical tool that looks at your position, your keywords, competitive trading, and trending of key search words that you either are looking to conquer or should. So it's a really, really helpful tool to base your SEO on. So if you're not subscribing and your SEO provider is not subscribing, chances are you probably need someone else. And yes, Google Analytics does some level of SEO, nowhere close to as diagnostical as SEMrush. Yeah, somebody has put SEMrush, good. Blogs, hidden or visible on the website. Up to you, really. I normally keep them visible. The only thing about blog, and what you can do is you can have one tile that's biggest for the latest blog and then small tiles for the past blogs. I think it's always interesting to see the history. It's not whether they are visible. The most important is their content really supporting your site SEO? Because ultimately they have two parts, right? One is you're driving amplification, and the other is you're driving information to your customers about your brand. I would say the SEO part is the most important one. But if you are already putting content out there, you might as well get recognition of that within your site. Any other questions? Oh, do you have any tips what should put on into your blog on e-commerce website? And how often would you recommend posting blogs? It depends. Blogs need to be part of your wider communication strategy. So it needs to go hand in hand with what's happening on social media, right? Blogs alone are just part of a wider cohesion. So if you are really active on social media, you balance it out with blog and vice versa. So to me, and we are running out of time, but part of social media is again, going back to your strategy, what is the target audience that you're trying to attract? And what are the key messages that you're trying to communicate, right? Once you figure out those two, it will naturally inform the type of content that you will have both in social media and in blogging. So if your business is about recruitment, as someone here already has, your blogs naturally should be about tips for interviewing, how to impress your boss, how do you know that's time to move on, and so on. It's content that you think people that are starting to consider switching a job would find relevant. So kind of targeting what topics are interesting for your audience, and then contrasting them or kind of putting them in a context of what is trending. So going back to SEO and how can you get the right search terms within your content that will help your websites to have a greater authority, to then come higher in ranking in organic search. So there's not one fits all. It's know your audience, know your unique differentiation in the market, and then use those two to create content that you think is going to be relevant and will help people to stand out. Now, I have to apologize. I have clearly completely overrun on all of this content. We have another section on social media, but I will have to go. So what I can commit to is I can run an extra session specific to social media, so that we do it justice. But I will share the slides at the end of the call today as well, so you can read through them in your own time. And if you do have any specific follow-up questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. There is an email address in this deck as well. Feel free to ping me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alena, for your time as always. And like we said, feel free to stay on for a little bit on the call just to talk about digital pioneers. And like we said, we will get in touch with you whether we're gonna have a social media session, and we'll share the recording and the deck as well from today. But thank you so much, Alena. We know you have something to go somewhere to go to, so we'll say goodbye. But feel free to stay, everyone, if you have other questions, especially about the program. Yeah,
Thank you
Alena,
so much. Really
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. You take care.
You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Yeah. So if does anyone have any questions about the program, and I'll take this chance as well to just remind everyone who haven't booked their check-in call with the launch it advisors. Essentially, that is a key step so that you'll be paired with a mentor, and you'll get mentoring, and you'll get the chance to pitch for the funding. Um, and then, so we didn't get to the social media part as well. So we'll try to arrange that separately. But any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments. But if none, we can end the session on here as well. Oh, yeah, I'm just reading some questions. Are you able to send us the email for Elena to reach out to her? Definitely. And if you have questions that you didn't get to ask for the session today, feel free to send that as well, because I will be able to send that all to her along with her contact. Like I said, she is very passionate about helping startups, and she has her own marketing agency called Wiggle Marketing, which you can probably work with her on that. She also before offered free mentoring sessions to two of our launch it clients. So that's something that can be um, arranged maybe with her. Um, Alexander, yes, this recording, I'll be uploading it on the launch it YouTube page. So you can see it by end of today. It'll be on there. It's launch it underscore UK. Um, Hannah's asking what support will take place during the mentoring sessions. Is it a one-off? So the mentoring sessions will be all about um, basically the mentors will um, talk to you about what your organization or your business needs in order to grow, specifically with the digital side of things. So for example, um, do you need some help with your website, with your SEO, and things like that? Because that will inform the next set of master classes um, that we will plan for you, basically. So it's all about that. And it's not a one off session. I think it's an ongoing thing, but I think a minimum of two mentoring sessions with your mentors. And sometimes the mentors just carry on as well, helping you out throughout like a specific period of time. So it's a good opportunity to meet these people who can also signpost you sometimes to like other people who can help you with specific things for your business. Yeah. So if you haven't, just book it in. Any more questions before we end the call? Um, yeah. If there's no more questions, hopefully we'll see you on the 19th of March. That's the inspirational talk with Polish Pad founder, Abisola Bright. And of course, the next masterclass will be first Wednesday of next month, if April 2nd. So, yeah, thanks again for attending. And sorry that we had to cut it short because of an emergency commitment that Elena had. But we'll make sure to, yeah, make sure to send me the questions. Check out our YouTube for the recording. Send any other questions you have, and we'll make sure to arrange a separate session for social media if that's what everyone would prefer. Yeah. So we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.